There's this thing called utility theory. Basically the idea that we make decisions based on the best expected outcome. Well, some dudes in the 80s decided that maybe it wasn't quite this simple, and they coined this other thing, regret theory. It's basically utility's pessimistic twin. The idea that we make decisions based on the outcome that we will regret the least. But what happens when these two theories contradict each other? Say it's 3 PM and you've already had 2 cups of coffee today, but you're feeling lethargic and you've got a project that's due at 5. You know, if you have another cup of coffee now, you'll have the concentration and energy to get the project in on time. But that ultimately you'll regret it because you won't be able to sleep later that night. That's how it feels to thru-hike. Or at least it was for me. It's the curse of knowing. The idea that once your eyes have been opened to a certain experience or fact, that you can never go back to when you didn't have that perspective. So after walking 2,500 miles, after 4 months of living literally the simplest you could possibly live, returning home doesn't really feel like returning at all. Since I finished hiking the PCT in September last year, I've been feeling a little lost. It's this strange thing no one really talks about, where you go through this period of mourning over the kind of person you're able to be on trail. Since then, I've been chasing the feeling, trying to find how I can be the grubby, carefree, vulnerable, brave me rather than this watered down version I came home to. So naturally, I hiked. A couple of friends had wanted to see the highest point in Australia, Mount Kosciuszko. We put aside a weekend in summer, packed our bags with all of our well-worn gear, and headed into the mountains. We'd just about convinced ourselves before we even walked out the door that we could no longer be impressed by the mountains and valleys we used to call our favourite, after having experienced the Sierra Nevada and Washington State. We pointed at the rolling hills and reminisced on jagged cliffs and expanses of desert as we drove. As excited as I felt to be back on trail, to sleep in my tent, there was this feeling I just couldn't shake. It was as if hiking a manageable distance, knowing you'll be back in the warm car in just one day, carrying a day's worth of food rather than a week's, just didn't make sense. I felt like I should be doing more purely because I knew now that I could. And then the mountains laughed in my face. In the middle of Aussie summer, heavy snow covered the ground. We decided last minute to hire snowshoes, and thank God we did. As the most epic storm rolled over and we rushed to set up our tents in the fast melting snow, I couldn't help but feel humbled. It didn't matter that we'd hiked less than 10 kilometers. There was always going to be a challenge. And as I sat in my tent drinking wine from the bottle and watching rain fall on the Dyneema above my head, and then later when it cleared and we climbed outside to watch the sunset over the snow, I felt that sense of awe I thought I would never feel again. And it felt familiar. It felt comfortable. It does make you wonder though, if I can find this sense of content only hours from home in what most people would describe as discomfort, how could I find it in my everyday life? How could I watch the doors to the elevator of my office open every single morning and not feel like I was wasting not only the 30-second ride to the 3rd floor, but the 8 hours before I would get back in the elevator, or the weeks or months before I could get back on trail? Would I have to keep hiking every chance I got? Does discontent just follow us everywhere we go? Once you become a thru-hiker, is being a thru-hiker all you have? Surely not. I fucking hope not. Then I drove myself down the south coast, threw a mattress in the car, drove nowhere in particular. Maybe the only way to know that feeling was out there, elsewhere, was to be alone. On trail, you're forced to face and to feel everything as it comes. A tide that at first seems to barrel at you and pin you under, but eventually rolls through you as you start to strip back all the ways you would cope in normal life. Without the bullshit, life is simple. And of course, there's all of this big stuff. But then there's also stuff like this. Why did no one warn me that carrying around a poop kit for 4 months would severely mess with my psychology around going to the bathroom? It's like the second I start walking now, my body's like, looks like you're gonna shit yourself. What I'm trying to say is, I just tried to walk to the beach and I almost shit myself. In many ways, being a thru-hiker is like being a teenager again. And stick with me here because I promise it makes sense. When you get home, everyone wants to hear about what you've done. They want to try backpacking, and that should be so exciting, but there's this inherent feeling that no one will ever truly understand you anymore. It's the first time you experience independence on such a scale, and because of that, your eyes are wide open and you learn and see things that otherwise might have just passed you by.
It seems we've picked a great spot to camp. We've got leeches and mozzies. Perfect.
But we have some medicine. So I think we'll sleep okay.
We're gonna be fine.
I think we'll be fine.
You eat like a teenager. But mostly when you think you know everything there is to know about hiking, about life, you're humbled again. New little lessons and new mistakes. I've always been a pretty work-driven person. You know the saying, work smarter, not harder? Yeah, I don't. Before I'd even left the States, I'd lined up a job. I sent in an old resume from the top of a mountain somewhere, lined up an interview for the day after I got back in the country, and I got COVID on the plane home, so I was bedridden that whole week. But I still did the interview in my pajama pants and blazer, and I started the next week. Since then, I've kind of just fallen back into old patterns. I've been running a fair bit and socializing, but I've not been working on anything that really gives me fulfillment. And I guess I'm starting to realize that maybe that's a really sad way to live. So now the real work begins. I've got all the little pieces, all the lessons that adventuring has given me. Now I just have to figure out how to put them all together to create a life that I'm excited to wake up and live every day. And without all that pressure on doing the things I love, without the expectation, it becomes so much more easy to enjoy them. I can look around and not resent the place I live or the way I'm spending my free time. There is wonder in the little things, the things I've already seen 100 times before. And sure, I still feel miles away from the girl who walked across America and sat on top of the monument in the pouring rain, and I'm in no way done searching for her. I will continue to book thru-hike after thru-hike, and I literally just did this. I leave in a month's time. But I guess I've realized that I'm in control. I can decide what happens next. So what am I trying to say? I don't know. Thru-hiking will change your life, but probably not in the way you expect. And whether it's all worth it in the end is something I can't tell you. But I don't know. I say fucking drink the coffee.